Welcome back to the Power of One podcast. I am Jennifer Page, president of Champions for CASA, the nonprofit auxiliary of the 8th Judicial Court CASA program here in Clark County, Nevada. We are here on the beautiful Las Vegas Strip at the South Point Hotel and Casino. I am joined by my co-host, Emilio Swan, who will speak firsthand to what the Las Vegas CASA program can do to change lives.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Emilio Swan, 25 years old. As mentioned, I'm a former foster youth who spent his time in the foster care system here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm also a U.S. Marine and a law enforcement officer.
Well, we have a guest speaker with us today. We have Judge Margaret Pickard, who's joining us. And Judge Pickard, you're here to talk to us a little bit about what happens to a child as they're removed from care. So if you can maybe just start off and educate us a little bit about what actually happens to a child.
So there's many aspects that we as judges become involved with. So first of all, there's 26 family court judges in Las Vegas, and 6 of us are assigned to child welfare calendars. We're just assigned geographically. So I'm in charge of the central area of Las Vegas. But we also have the opportunity to work with youth from all over the county. And really, we come involved in different stages. So first, for example, if a child is removed from care, we may become involved because the Department of Family Services, which is now known as Clark County Family Services, has applied for a warrant for removal of that child. That typically comes if you have a substance exposed baby that was born at the hospital or a child who shows up at school with bruises on them. So it's contrary to the welfare of that child to remain in the parental home. There's issues of abuse or neglect, and that comes in a variety of ways. The court needs to review whether or not a child was properly removed from their parents' care. And I would say in 99% of the cases, they're absolutely justified in that. There might be a one-off where I might say, well, could you do an in-home safety plan with this family? Is the parent's drug use out of control, for example? Is their mental health such that they're wandering the streets and the child is unsupervised at 3 a.m? Maybe it's a child who's, as I said, substance exposed or mental health issues that a parent has. Often it's domestic violence incidents. The other factor we have to look at is have reasonable efforts been made to prevent the removal of that child from the home? Have you tried an in-home safety plan? Have you gotten them services? If a child has Native American heritage, we have to make sure the department's made active efforts to prevent that removal. And that's a historical problem that we've had. And generally speaking, what people don't understand is by the time a child has come into the care of the Clark County Family Services, that agency has worked with that family on an informal basis. They've tried to get services into the home. They've tried to get the parents into services. They tried to get, say, for example, if you have a parent who is using substances, they might try to get them into counseling, but they haven't voluntarily participated.
So you talked about that warrant stage and how that happens. I'm imagining that probably happens at any time, day or night.
Right. It's 24/7. So out of us, every 4 weeks, I go on duty 24 hours a day for 2 weeks in a row. The first week I'm backup. And then, so for if the primary judge isn't able to get it at that moment, then I have to get it. And then I go on to primary duty. But it could be at 3 a.m. It could be at 4 a.m. The department calls us. They say we've submitted a warrant. I swear them in. I say, is everything true and correct in that warrant? And then I review the warrant. Now, we have a good system because it goes to whoever's on call. Then it goes to the backup. And if I miss it, it goes to our presiding family court judge. And if he misses it, it goes to the chief judge. So we have a lot of incentive to make sure our phones are on. We really care. And we really want to make sure that everything is done to protect the parents' rights and the children's rights, because it's scary. If the police come in or if something happens, it's scary to be removed from mom and dad. And you talk to a lot of those kids, and a lot of them would rather just stay in the known environment than to go to the unknown environment, right? And so we really need to make sure those parents' constitutional rights are protected and that those kids' best interests are, of course, protected throughout this process. And I love what I do. Absolutely passionate about it. And the importance is CASAs become really important in this process. And CASAs are the people who come into court and tell us, look this is what this kiddo is experiencing. Because many times we get focused on the safety aspects, right? The agency comes in because there's a safety risk. And the court comes in to review, was that an appropriate removal? CASA, court-appointed special advocates, come in to tell us, and this is how this kiddo's feeling. this kiddo's really scared. And really, I always like to say when the kids come in, this is your team. This is Team Emilio. These people all want to make sure that your interests are being protected and that you're okay. And that's really what this court process is about, is to make sure the parents and the families as a whole, that their interests are protected, the kids are safeguarded. So at the first court hearing, one of the pivotal questions is, where is that child now? Are they with a family member? Is there a family member that can take them? That's always our preference, a family member. Or what I love about Nevada is we're smart. We also allow fictive kins. So let's say you have a teenager, and that teenager has a grandmother who's living in New Jersey that they've never met. But that teenager hangs out at his or her friend's house all the time, and they love that their friend's mom. That person's fictive kin. They have a strong emotional tie. They may not even know grandma who lives across the country. And so we want to make sure first that that child has the safest, most appropriate, least restrictive placement possible, number one. And number two, we want to make sure that down the road, we can make sure that we have a good placement for them if mom and dad aren't able to step in. We're also making sure they stay in their school of origin. A school of origin means the school they attended when they were removed, because that is probably the only consistent place that kiddo is going to have once they come into care. Their environment at home's changed, their after school's changed, but their school shouldn't change. They should go to the same teacher, their same friends, their same activities as much as possible. So school of origin is one of the pivotal things we will talk about at what we call the preliminary protective hearing, which is the first hearing that has to be held within 72 hours of a child being removed from their parents' care.
It's really interesting to me. So as being a CASA volunteer, I don't get involved in any of that front end process, right? I'm not assigned until much later. So just hearing about how that works, incredibly interesting. I can imagine from a child's point of view, it's got to be incredibly scary, yes, right? I mean, you're going through this whole thing. Judge Pickard, does the child get involved in this place? Does it depend on their age? Like, how is the decision made as far as how much involvement the kids have in this process?
That's a really good question. The child's a party. So in other words, you as a teenager have the right to come in at any time. And sometimes I'll have teenagers come to the first hearing and say, I don't want to be separated from my parents. What are the options? And I will say, is there a family member you can go and stay with so mom and dad can see you all the time? The preference, as I've said, is always for the kids to be with family, because if you're with family, mom and dad can drop by and see the kids when it's safe, right? During the day, in the afternoon, in the morning, before school. But if you're in a foster home, you have a scheduled visit once a week. That's really scary. So we try to make sure the kids are in a place that they are somewhat familiar with. So we're really focused on the kids. So the kids are welcome to come in at the first hearing. They typically don't, because it happens so fast. And it's kind of scary when you're a kiddo at any age, if you're 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, to come into a courtroom.
Oh, definitely.
It's terrifying sometimes. And that's why when I talk to kids, especially if I do an interview of the kids, I get off the bench and I talk to them. I go down, I shake their hand, I have a treasure box. And that's a different aspect that we try to bring a humanness to this process, because it's scary. Usually we get the teenagers who come in, their CASAs bring them in, and they bring them in to kind of state their position. And this is important to me, because these kids need to be heard. Their voice is important. And they have attorneys with them at all stages of the process, and the attorney will come in. And here's what's really interesting. The attorney's job is to tell the court what the child wants. And that may be to go back to mom and dad's house. But mom and dad may be actively using. So the CASA, court-appointed special advocate's job, is to say, this is what's in my child's best interest, is to have a relationship with mom and dad, but maybe not go back into the home yet. And that's an interesting distinction that people often aren't aware of. But every stage is, how do we protect those kiddos?
That's interesting. One of the things that I just happened to me last week, as a matter of fact. So I work with a 14-year-old girl and brought her into court, and we stopped into the CASA office ahead of time. The team had asked her, do you know what Jennifer's role is as a CASA volunteer? And she said, yeah, she's going to go into court and tell the judge what I want. And they looked at her for a second. She said, wait a second, that's not entirely true. She is going to do that. But first she's going to tell them what she thinks I need.
Right.
And sometimes that's different.
Right.
And so I think it's really important for the kids to understand that, right? To make sure that they understand, there is a difference in that. And so what I always tell the kids that I'm working with is, I'm here to do both. I'm going to, first and foremost, talk about what you need, because my role is to do things in your best interest and to make sure that we're doing things that are aligned with what's going to be long-term best for you, right? But to also kind of bring in their perspective as well and make sure, even though they have a cap attorney who's there to represent them, it's easier, I think, to kind of have those two things side by side.
So I'm very thankful for some of the decisions that were made for me, some of the people that did advocate my CASA for my best interest instead of what I wanted. Because what I wanted, was to eat pizza for the rest of my life and ice cream for everything.
Right, exactly.
And live in the sense of normalcy that I was in. But what I needed was, a safer place to live. What I needed was to be in the same school, because I'm looking back at it now and I'm like thinking, what if we were placed back in that home? What would have happened? As much as I wanted to be with biological mother, looking back on it now, I can see it definitely wasn't the place, neither for me or my siblings, to go back to. Definitely looking back at some of the choices that were advocated in the court from my CASA, from my cap attorney, from all these different people that were on my team. I call it like Justice League, the round table.
Yes, exactly.
All these different people you were mentioning that were advocating for my best interests.
And the judge has a pivotal role. And that's why I love doing child welfare. People often say, what do you do at court? And I say, I work with abused and neglected children. And they say, that must be so hard. I'm like, it is, but I love it. I love that, knowing that we can make a difference. I love knowing that there's a role that we have to even just talk to the kids. And if a kiddo is online or in person in my courtroom, I always say, is there something else you guys want to talk about? This is all about you. And I say that to the kids. We're here to talk about you. So if at any time you want to talk to me, let me know. Or if you don't, because you're a little bit nervous, your CASA or your attorney will speak for you, and that's fine too. But you need to be part of that process. You need to have the right. You have the right to be part of the process. I need to tell you, we're here for you. We're here to talk about you, but there should never be anything about you without you if you want to be there.
It reminds me almost as if like you're going to a doctor's appointment and they're just pushing on a certain sore area, and then instead of asking you if that hurts, like, hey, do you think this hurts them? Do you think they're
Right.
feeling it? Like,
That's a good analogy. Exactly.
Because it's the voice of the child that's going through this that matters the most.
Yeah,
right?
because I think that helps. But a lot of times you're right. I love the analogy of we're pushing and we're saying, do you think he hurts? Rather than saying, do you hurt?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's important. And that's what we want to talk about. And I think that's the analogy that we as judges need to hear.
The saying that I always use is, at the end of the decision, there's a child, and we need to keep that in mind. And it's so great knowing that our judges feel the exact same way and are making decisions with that same kind of point of view and perspective, to make sure that we're just protecting these kids. Well, Judge Pickard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
This was so enlightening, as always. My co-host Emilio and I just couldn't thank you enough for that.
Well, I feel honored to be here. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone else out there listening, I think one of the things that we really want to emphasize is, remember that it just takes one, right? That's what we're really here to talk about. And as Judge Pickard talked about, Amelia talked about, we need your help. We need you to come out and help advocate for these kids, become a CASA volunteer. And if you can't become a CASA volunteer, that's okay too. There's a couple other ways you can help. There's always ways for us to be able to get involved. And so you can become a volunteer. You can tell someone else you know about it and tell them to become a volunteer, help us spread awareness. We are a 501c3. I'm always going to ask for money. We do need that. And all of our funds donated do go towards recruiting CASA volunteers as well. So thank you so much once again. And thank you for joining us.